Burning.
My name is Indra Bhose. I'm a director. I directed 3 episodes of London Burning back in the 1990s, so a long time ago. The way a director gets involved with a show is always a mystery to me. I'm sure my agent was doing something. It just, an offer comes in, or just not an offer, rather, would you like to come and meet the people at London's Burning to a view to maybe direct it? But of course, I imagine my agent would have been putting feelers out to lots of TV shows because I was just starting out then. And Paul Knight at London's Burning asked me in for a meeting. I cannot remember the meeting at all. But then they offered me 1 episode, which is unusual because mostly on TV as a director you get offered a block, which is 2 or 3 or 4 episodes. So they offered me an episode, and that was how I did it. But it's a mystery how they found me because up until then it had been mainly 3 directors, who with the most respect in the world, the old timers, had directed it. And then I think Paul decided, I don't know why, I still don't know why, that needed fresh blood. So a lot of us started to come in and just do 1 or 2 episodes. But, the Jerrys and Keith Washington, they carried on doing the bulk of them. So that's how I got involved. It's the usual thing. So the 3 episodes I directed, I'm afraid I've got a crib sheet here. I had to look it up, so I'm not going to lie. The first one was interesting. As a director of episodic television, sometimes you get big episodes of stuff to do with action and a huge storyline. And other times you kind of get more sort of the day-to-day episode. So what had happened, the episode, this is looking up my notes, series 9, series 8. The previous episode had been a huge shout. There was there's one of the Jerrys directed it, I think. And there was a huge shout in a HMO, habitation of multiple occupancy, and they took a whole building. We shot a lot in Woolwich Arsenal, I'm sure you know that, and they burnt it, and it was a huge deal. So I got the aftermath. So my episode basically opens with just all the appliances leaving and a few, water trickling down. But what was great, I had a very funny storyline as well. And I was delighted to be doing it. And of course, what I got, which always interests the director, is the human drama. Andrew Casimir's character having issues with a senior officer, the White Helmet, almost leading to scuffles. I forget what else there was. There was, of course, Poison Pierce's, again, a great storyline. His dog goes missing. And he was so sad, and of course, it was lovely human storyline, which I really enjoyed doing. And although I do enjoy the stunts and the big action, really what I do is actors and emotions. So that was a great storyline. And then the next year I did 2 episodes in series 9. That was, and what I take away from those ones is really the action. There was some fantastic, which they weren't fires, but I did a whole sequence where a motorcycle messenger steals money, throws someone through a whole plate glass window, goes running along the factory, gets run over by a forklift truck. I remember that was a hugely fun sequence to direct. And I straight away have to take my hat off to Paul Knight was the main man, but for me, the second main man was Alf Joint, who did all the stunts all through London's Burning. And he was my hero, and he helped me. And to this day, I still, when I shoot a stunt, I remember what Alf taught me back then.
People.
Yeah. The thing about London's Burning for a director is that you always got something to get your teeth into. And I don't know any of my colleagues, one of the things a director always wants to direct, I think, is courtroom. And there was the court session where Pitbull was I think they even call it a court martial, because obviously the fire service is based on the Navy. And because of the great relationship that London's Burning had with the London Fire Brigade, we actually shot that in the courtroom of the London Fire Brigade headquarters on the Thames, which was great. And it was a treat to do. And what a lovely actor Pitbull was, very sorely missed, lovely, lovely guy. Nothing like his character, absolutely lovely man, playing this horrible person. But doing the courtroom sequence was fascinating, and especially because we're doing it in the real place, and it was a wonderful set, as it was, oak panels, and that was really a very interesting thing to direct. And of course, the other storyline was Marianne coming from the Dutch Fire Brigade. And again, the thing I remember about London's Burning is that Paul Knight, and you know this from all the interviews you've done, he liked to do things properly. And if it took time and money, we did it. So we wanted a sequence where Nick shows Marianne around London. So we basically spent 2 days shooting her in all the highlights of London, which ended up with like 20-second screen time. But we had to do it properly. And we went down to the London Fire Brigade training ground. So you're there for half a day, from which you get 5 seconds of footage. We went to the London Fire Brigade Memorial, which is right by St. Paul's. We shot there. So again, yes, Paul, as you know from all your other interviewees, really like to do things properly, which was a treat. The bulk of London's Burning was shot in a studio in Borough in London, where we had all the what we call the standing sets, which is the dormitory, the mess. Then we had the second location, which was a fire station. You'll remember which one it was. I can't remember. And it was basically a disused fire station, so we could have the run of it. So we shot all the kind of scenes around the appliance there. And then there was a lot of location. And if I've noticed one thing in 25 years of television, is that location on studio-based shows, location is getting less and less because it's expensive and it takes time. But on Burning, we were out all the time on location, and lots of locations. The most memorable one actually isn't a location. There was the episode, you'll know which one it was. It was where the taxi driver gets his arm stuck down the drain because he's looking for his keys. So I went and looked at lots of public loos, and they all look rather boring. And I said, no, I want it to be in one of those old Victorian public loos that they have in London, all marble and extraordinary decor. And we went and looked at some, and we said, we can't put actors in there because they're disgusting. You can't have an actor, no amount of cleaning. So Colin Monk, again, my third hero, the production designer, said, I'll build you one. What do you mean I'll build you a Victorian loo with running water? And we used mineral water. And this is part of the trust of London's Burning. I had one discussion with Colin about the Victorian loo. I never went to see it or looked at any plans until the day before I shot there. And it was this beautiful Victorian loo. So actually it looks like a location, but it was an extraordinary set. And it was a set for one sort of minor storyline. But apart from that, the other location, of course, I remember is Woolwich Arsenal, because at the time it was this vast area with buildings and open spaces and disused factories, and we had the run of it. So you could do anything you wanted there. And then obviously now that's become flats and things. You can't do that, but that was a great location which we used quite a bit. And apart from that, I can't remember any specific locations. Oh, I do remember one. Yeah, hang on. Victoria bus station. Again, the quality of the show. Just one scene where Recall says bye-bye to his family going to Scotland. In a lesser show, you'd say, oh, well, he's there at the front door of their house and the mum's going off with the 2 kids. No, I said Victoria bus station. So we had Victoria bus station, one area. And of course, being a director, I said, well, as the bus goes away, I want to have a crane shot. I want the crane to come up and show Recall looking all lonely and the bus going away. And if I remember rightly, I think even the kids waving from the back window. Maybe I'm imagining that. And they said, what, you want a crane indoors in Victoria bus station? And I said, yes. Now, in most shows, they'd say, forget it. Of course, on Paul Knight's London's Burning, they said, okay. So we had a crane indoors, for that last shot when the bus leaves. So that was another wonderful location. I directed 3 episodes, and then I stopped because, if I recall rightly, Paul Knight left the show. I can't remember. Or whatever happened was, at that time, as now, I'm very lucky. I was very busy as a director. So obviously, you go off and do other things, and if they offer you it, you can't do it because you're doing something else. So by the time it came to thinking about going back to London's Burning, Paul had gone. Other people had taken over, and just as a viewer, I noticed there were less shouts. It was much more, domestically based. In my opinion, it kind of lost the flavor of London's Burning. And what was fun for me, because I spoke about the dramatic, sort of human scenes alongside the shouts and things. I enjoyed doing both, and so it never came about really. But if Paul had stayed, and if the style of the show had remained, I would have loved to have done more, but it never happened. Paul left within a couple of years. The show changed and didn't last very long. I can't remember how many series it lasted after Paul, but no, I would have liked to have done more, but it never happened. Filming London's Burning, we had a schedule which was fairly normal for television drama, which is for a 1-hour episode, which on ITV is about 43 minutes, I think. You had basically 11 days to shoot the episode. But the thing about London's Burning is that was the template. But if you had anything that needed more filming or was complicated, you always got the time. So it went beyond the 11 days per episode. I mean, one thing I do remember very clearly is I did an episode which ended with Bayleaf looking at a manhole cover, and the manhole cover blows and it comes down towards him. And of course, we cut to black and you think, Jimmy Hazeldine Bayleaf's been killed by this manhole cover, which wasn't the case. So we actually shot that on location in a street. Again, the quality of the show and the special effects. A real manhole, they got in underneath, they put pyrotechnics. We had a kind of a very light plastic fake manhole cover done. We didn't want Jimmy to stand under a real one. And we did the scene and it was fired up in the air. And I did that shot looking up at it as it comes towards Bayleaf. And the shot didn't really look good. It didn't look right. I wanted the manhole cover to be spinning, coming towards him. So we looked at this and I said, that's not really great, is it? And Paul said, fine. So we sent a second unit out and they spent half a day, a unit, just shooting manhole covers being shot in the air, coming down towards the camera to get that right. And that was sort of extraordinary. So yes, it was and like any television, it was a tight schedule. As you got towards the last hour of the day, you were rushing to get stuff done. But what was great was that time was given. Like if there was a fire shout, that was almost put aside from the main schedule, and you did that separately. I think it was in Borough Studios, we had what they called the burn stage, and you could build little bits and pieces. I did an episode where someone leaves a wallpaper stripper on by mistake, and the whole kitchen and living room catch fire, and that was done on the burn stage, again as a separate thing. So the schedules were very fair, and certainly I found in television often scheduling for stunts and action is under-scheduled, and you should never rush them. So that was another great thing about London's Burning. Oh, I mean, the cast were absolutely wonderful. They're all very, very good actors. And they came on set prepared. They knew what they were doing. They were very kind to me as a first-time director of London's Burning, and a fairly new director. This was what, 1997. I'd only been directing for 4 years, I think, at that point. Directing drama, because I started in documentary. they were very kind. They were amazing. All of them were really lovely. Obviously, the one I remember dearly is Jimmy Hazeldine, a lovely man, taken far too early. He was so wonderful and very humble, because when he started directing, remember he started speaking to me saying, can you give me some advice? I said, Jimmy, I've only been doing this for 5 years. You've been acting, you're one of the greatest British actors of your generation. You know what you're doing. Advice from me. But Jimmy was wonderful. Andrew Casimir, I really enjoyed working with. All of them, really. They were absolutely wonderful to work with. And the thing I remember most is that, and I think it's something maybe that's disappeared a bit because of schedules and budgets, is we had huge fun. And something that Paul encouraged was having fun. And I mean, spending money, because we shot it on film in those days. And as I think most people know, film is expensive. But we would do sort of jokes and we'd film them. You know, we'd do jokes like the ones that I remember we did a scene in a boxing, you remember the names better than me. Who was the character that had the gym and was a boxer? For some reason, he was boxing. So again, you know, in the period of 3 episodes, I got to do everything any director wants. I mean, you know, after Raging Bull, the chance to shoot a boxing match, it was just, you know, dream come true. Of course, I pinched every shot from Scorsese. So we did a sequence where we were doing close shots in the ring, and the boom operator, Charlie, was there. And we kept the camera running, and suddenly the 2 boxers, Glenn and someone else, joking, of course, started pummeling him. And we just kept the cameras rolling, and it doesn't sound funny now, but it was funny to us. And then I think at the end of year party, they show all these clips, but some of them were quite elaborate, you know, and good fun. And Paul encouraged us to do it. And on another note, of course, Paul's rap parties at the end of the season were legendary because they were so big. And the thing about Paul was that he considered everyone who made the show important. So at that rap party, you had all the suppliers. So say you rented vans to the production, you came with your family, you know, anyone who worked on it in any way, you got to come to the party, because without you, the show couldn't be made. And that was a huge, I mean, you've heard this lots of times about how generous Paul Knight was. One Paul Knight story I tell you, I think it was I just done the first day of shoot. And I'm sure you know this from other interviews, is the pub set that we filmed in was actually a real working bar. And on wrap, when we finished, that became the crew and cast bar. And I'd had a good first day. So Paul Knight came in, and he said, Indra, and he gave me a big hug. And I'm like, amazed, I know how to producer hug me. And then he went up and down. And then so I was going to say, you think you did well, did you? And he goes, yeah, I mean, the producer hugged me. He goes, yeah. To do really well, he has to hug you and lift you off the ground. So I'm not sure if Paul ever lifted me off the ground, but, you know, to get hugged by a producer after the first day of shoot was something quite remarkable. I love Paul, I really did. I saw him around many years because he lived near where I live. So I used to see him and have a little chat, and he always had things on the go. He was a great man. He was a raconteur, and he loved life. You know, sometimes you'd be there and he'd say, right, let's go to lunch. And you just went off to some restaurant for lunch. And another thing, legendary about London's Burning, the way he looked after people, is that the lunches we had, so we have a recce before we shoot anything, we go around and look at all the locations and discuss what we're going to do. And after that, we used to have this lunch. And the lunches were amazing. We went to really great restaurants and had great food. And obviously all on, you know, Paul's tab, but he quite rightly considered that very important in terms of bonding. In fact, another show which I've directed a lot of, The Bill, before we shot a block of The Bill, I think it was a Friday, all of us, the crew and everyone, if they're available, we used to go for a lunch, which is a very, I've never seen that before. And that was a Bill thing, because that's another show. I think, as I was saying before, I think there are 2 types of storyline that I really love. There were the ones, obviously, with the action and the stunts, but also the real human ones. And again, the one where Pierce's dog went missing, that was a really sad storyline. And it was beautifully played, and I loved doing that. And of the shouts, I think the one where the motorcycle messenger got thrown under a forklift, mainly because my great memories of working with the great stunt arranger Alf Joint and another great stunt arranger and stunt person, Gabe Cronolly, who was the person who got thrown through the plate glass window. So that was Gabe, who was again a colleague and did a lot of the stunts on Burning. So they were the two, but they were all great storylines. I mean, I really enjoyed doing them all because the script writing was great. You had a great script editor, Simon Sharkey, who I know you've interviewed, and Paul was very hot on story. Always had to have a strong story in whatever you did, and he knew his actors could deliver it because, you know, for an actor to deliver a story of his dog's gone missing, I mean, but that was a, you know, really, really sad story. I think his wife had gone missing at the same time. I think he was more concerned about the dog than his wife, I think. Yeah. I think I've shared most of my fond memories of London's Burning, and it all comes down to the fact it was huge fun. It was beautifully made with a marvelous bunch of actors and a fantastic crew. And Jeff Harrison, the DOP, I worked with most. You know, in the world of film, one of the hardest things to light is fire. And, you know, he was absolutely marvelous. And the camera operators. And in those days, of course, we shot, when I first started, we shot on film without monitors, really. So you had to trust everyone. You had to trust the camera operator when they said, I got it. I mean, after we did have a kind of monitor, but in the early days of monitors, they were very little and you could hardly see anything. But we were also excited to have a monitor. We all pretended, oh yeah, that's great. But you couldn't see anything. They weren't like monitors today, which are like great big televisions and you can see everything perfectly in color. So what stands out is it was just a lovely time, and it was a fantastic show to direct. And it's still one of my fondest memories as a director, and has some of the, I think, the best stuff I've done, even though it was, well, nearly 25 years ago. Well, these days I do what I've done for the last 25 years, which is direct television drama. And I've been very lucky and fortunate to have, 25 years working, doing all kinds of different shows. So I've directed the staples of British television, shows like EastEnders and The Bill and Holby City and Casualty. But also I've done lots of other things as well, single films, children's films. I've just done a project which is one of the most incredible adventures I've had, which is I directed the film version of a Shakespeare play for the Royal Shakespeare Company, Much Ado About Nothing. We shot it up in Stratford-upon-Avon on the Royal Shakespeare Theatre stage, and that was a real adventure. That was absolutely fantastic and like nothing I've done before. So really what I do these days is what I've always done, which is going between the staples. I direct a wonderful show called EastEnders a lot, which I love doing. Similar to London's Burning, wonderful cast, amazing crew, amazing new set, I believe, though I haven't shot on the new set. And whatever else comes up. And obviously because I'm Indian as well, so I've shot in Bangladesh and India. And so I get those projects as well, which just before COVID, I was the consulting director on the Arab world's first soap, which we shot in Abu Dhabi, again, which was something, an unusual project. So yes, I kind of do the staples and I get these unusual projects, which I love doing.